Holy fucking shit, I've been blown away by Japan. This is my final stop before going back home, and to be honest, I wasn't really expecting to come here. But I'm super excited to be here. I already loved Korea when I went there a couple months ago, and this is supposed to be even much better. Is Japan as amazing as everybody says it is? Will this be my favorite destination ever? How am I feeling after 3 months of traveling, and how am I dealing with coming back home? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome to Japan.
I'll come by and we'll talk tonight.
Since this is all organized last minute and that Japan is exponentially more expensive than all the other countries I've been to so far, here's the game plan. I fly into Osaka, go to Kyoto, and then end off my backpacking trip with a week in Tokyo, from which I have a flight back home. So let's maybe start with the expectations before going there. Having been to Korea already, I was expecting Japan to be relatively similar. I was expecting a very rigid and introverted society, insane culture, and terrible English. And I was partly right and partly wrong. Yes, you do have to be wary of how you act in public in Japan, because it's the polar opposite of Southeast Asia. People are incredibly respectful, well-mannered, they line up before entering the subway, everybody's dead quiet, and nobody comes to bother you in the street, which is truly a breath of fresh air after 3 months in Southeast Asia. The culture or the heritage is insane in Japan, and it's much better preserved than in Korea. But this is mostly due to the fact that Japan had a war 70 years ago, and Japan has been relatively unscathed since. But as you can imagine, there's definitely a strong sense of history and an urge to preserve it, while being a hyper-modern country in parallel. And as for their English, it honestly wasn't as bad as I expected. Korea was particularly terrible a couple months back. I think I've never been to a country where people were this bad at English. It was really difficult to communicate with people over there. But thankfully Japan was much better. Most people had a decent grasp on English, and I could make myself understood in almost any situation. But enough ramblings about Japan, let's get to the actual trip itself. First stop, Osaka. My first stop in Japan was Osaka. I flew through the night from Bali with a layover in Hanoi. I made it through immigrations relatively quickly, and I had my first ever drug search in an airport. Middle of the morning, I was finally in the center of Osaka. Time to start exploring. My first impressions of Osaka still stand. I wasn't particularly blown away by how it looks. It's a lot of post-World War II constructions that kind of lack character in my opinion. And there isn't that much to see in Osaka. Yeah, of course you have like Universal Studios and Nintendo World, but first off, I'm on a budget because I've been backpacking for the past 3 months and I'm kind of running short on money. And second, I didn't travel halfway across the world just to go sit my ass in an amusement park for a day. But anyways, my few days in Osaka were mostly spent walking around the city and taking in the vibe. And there were a few sights to behold. There's Dotonbori, a street filled with tons of fun restaurants with quirky facades. Cross over a little canal and you're in Shinsaibashi, where you have tons of nice stores and shopping malls. And right next to that, there was one of my favorite neighborhoods in Japan, Amerikamura. It's a small part of Osaka filled with tons of like little alternative culture stuff. There's tons of little thrift shops, like punk and goth inspired shops, and there's also tattoo parlors, which is quite a rare sight in Japan. Anyways, Osaka is also famous for its castle, which towers over a beautiful garden. I don't know, there's just something about Japanese architecture that I find really spectacular. So I had a nice little stroll around the gardens, I checked out the massive fortifications, and ended off with the panoramic view of Osaka from the top floor of the castle. But overall, I found Osaka to be a bit uneventful in terms of sights. However, Osaka was a great place to meet people. It's where I met tons of people I'll bump in later into this video, and the nightlife was absolutely amazing there. I ended up grabbing dinner with a couple guys from my hostel at a place that makes okonomiyaki. It's a type of Japanese pancake. But the great thing about that place is that you could pay 200 yens for a glass, which is about like €1.20, and you can make your own drink from their massive alcohol cabinet, alcohol bar. So if you wanted to like pour yourself an entire glass of whiskey, you could. So yeah, very good deal. Anyways, after staying in Osaka for a bit longer than I should have, I headed off for 24 hours in Kyoto. I got an empire of emotions, squats me cruising in my go-kart. I'm Warhol, I'm Wario when I'm in Mario Kart. Top in the charts, facing my cards, chop on my luck and when running these bars. Coca-Cola veins, I'm insane, trip through memory lane. Let me start off by saying that Kyoto has to be one of the most magical places I've ever been to in my life. Got into Kyoto, grabbed a quick lunch, dropped my bags off at the hostel, and then I was straight off to Mount Inari. It's a small hill filled with tons of shrines and those mythical orange gates. Minus the fact that it was a bit overcrowded, the walk was one of the most beautiful walks I've ever done, in my You're covered by these gates that really give off something special in my opinion. Speaking of special, the sunset from the top of Mount Inari was also something I quite enjoyed. Overlooking the lights of Kyoto, I saw the sun wave bye-bye to this beautiful mountain, and with that, most of the tourists going home as well. Which was great for me because I stayed a bit longer and enjoyed the rest of the shrines basically to myself. And a little train ride Rome, a quick dinner, and then some editing later, and I was in bed pretty early. Because the next day I had to be up pretty early to go see Hokanji Temple. It's a very famous Buddhist temple, and I wanted to get there pretty early so I could take some nice pictures without too many tourists in the way. And mission accomplished! Then I had some time to kill, so I went to see another temple. And this one was also quite special because it was surrounded by a very nice bamboo forest, which I'd never seen before, but really nice. After all that sightseeing and walking around some shopping streets, I took a little break to edit some photos and videos. Then it was finally time to head off to the last stop of this trip, Tokyo. It doesn't take a genius to guess that Tokyo is fucking awesome. It's the biggest city in the world and there's just so much to see. It's a bustling mix of neon lights sparkled with Japanese traditions. Anyways, just getting into Tokyo was already an experience. I balled out and got a bullet train between Kyoto and Tokyo, which takes the journey from a 9-hour bus ride to a 2.5-hour train ride. It's like being on a plane but with double the legroom and zero turbulence. And the best part about this train ride is that if you take it during the day, you have a beautiful view of Mount Fuji as you whisk by it like 300 kilometers. Speaking of Fuji, I was fortunate enough to be able to take a day trip to the mountain with some friends I met in Tokyo. It's a mere 2-hour train ride away from Tokyo, so I couldn't not go see it, you know? And there's something really majestic about Fuji. While it may not be the highest mountain, whatever, it's just very special because it towers over everything else and there's really nothing that comes close to like trying to stack up against it. It just shoots up out of nowhere and I think it looks amazing. And the cool thing about going to Fuji is that you can rent bikes from the train station and you can cycle to all these different spots where you can view Fuji from a different angle, and it's really cool. It was an amazing day with some very fun people and the views were just wow. Other notable thing that happened in Tokyo aside from just walking around the city was going to Daikoku. So if you don't know yet, I'm a bit of a car enthusiast. Like I'm not a giant car nerd, but I appreciate to go see some nice cars. Well, Japan has some pretty nice cars and a very deeply rooted car culture. So if you want to go see some nice cars, you go to Daikoku. So I met up with one of my dad's colleagues here in Japan. We took a 70s Camaro for a joyride across Tokyo speedways and ended up in Daikoku rest stop. It's basically a highway rest stop underneath like an exchange, and it's where all the car nerds from Tokyo come and park their cool cars, hang out for a while, sip a coffee, whatever. And it's really fun. It's really cool to go there because the cars are quite different from the ones we have in Europe. Like JDMs here in Europe are pretty rare, but there you can see like GTR, Supras, MX-5s, Eclipses, and even some cool foreign cars like Corvettes, Porsches, and McLarens. But anyway, after 7 days in Tokyo, it was finally time to head back home, back to Europe, back to real life. And with that, it pretty much wraps up my trip around Japan and around Asia. And what can I say? It's been an incredible experience to say the least. I feel like I've grown, I feel more at peace with myself than I did 3.5 months ago. I feel more in touch with myself, and I have a better idea of where I want to go in life from here. I'm super thankful I was able to do this, and especially surrounded by these amazing people that I met while backpacking. It's kind of difficult to put into words just how these past 3.5 months have felt, but if I would have to tell you one thing, it's just do it. If you've been afraid to leave everything behind and go travel, I know I was, do it. You won't regret it. And I haven't met a single person out here who wasn't happy to be traveling. But now starts the journey of going back home, readapting to normal life, and settling into a routine. So tune into the final vlog to see how that goes. Until then, take care, enjoy life. Ciao, see ya!